It was midnight when the cries and pain of an orphan filled the air, and smoke billowed into the sky. Mom, Dad. That was how it all began. Both parents perished in a fire when she was just 10. People said she caused the fire. Others blamed witches. But Vicky didn't know what had happened. All she could do was cry and move on. She was given a wrapper and sent to live with her aunt. The aunt, overwhelmed with children and a lack of food, constantly yelled at Vicky. "You're bad luck. You brought the fire to your own house. Go fetch water. Wash the plates. Don't eat too much rice." Every day felt like walking on broken glass. One afternoon, as Vicky scrubbed the floor, her aunt stood by the door and said, "You're old enough. Go find your own way." She handed Vicky a bag with 2 dresses and pushed her out. There were no hugs, no tears, just silence. Vicky picked up her small bag and left. She began moving from house to house, asking, "Do you need help?" Some people gave her food to sweep their compounds. Others let her wash clothes in exchange for coins. From morning to night, she worked. No play, no dolls, no friends. Her hands became calloused from carrying water, her back ached from the constant bending, but she never complained. Even her tears seemed to have forgotten their way. One day, a woman with red lipstick saw Vicky cleaning a gutter. "Can you work in a big house?" the woman asked. "Yes, Vicky replied. The woman smiled. "Come to Chief Edward's mansion tomorrow. Ask for Madame Adaku." That night, Vicky couldn't sleep. She lay on a mat behind a shop, staring at the ceiling made of old paper. "A mansion," she whispered, imagining shiny floors, clean air, and, perhaps, peace. The next morning, with the sun rising, Vicky made her way up the hill to the biggest house in Obele City, Chief Edward's mansion. Tall gates, white walls, a house that smelled of power and secrets. She had no idea what she was walking into, but life was waiting to reveal its story. The gates opened like the mouth of a hungry lion, and Vicky stepped inside, her heart small like a bean. Inside the mansion, 2 women ruled. Madame Adaku, loud and fast-paced, walked as though even chairs stood still when she passed. Her words were sharp like thunder. Madame Lisa, on the other hand, never shouted. She smiled, but her smile was cold, watching people as a cat watches its prey. Chief Edward, a wealthy man with money, land, and cars, had one thing missing, an heir. He'd tried with Madame Adaku, but only girls came. Madame Lisa had also given him girls, but still no son. Then Vicky arrived as a maid. She was given a small corner room in the back wing. No bed, just a mat and a cupboard. But she didn't complain. She cleaned, fetched water, washed clothes, and scrubbed toilets until they shone like glass. She didn't speak unless spoken to. "Too quiet," Madame Adaku would say, her eyes watching her suspiciously. "Quiet girl," Madame Lisa added. Vicky became part of the house, unnoticed, like a flower vase sitting in the corner. But even flowers grow, even silence hears things, and shadows hide stories. Vicky's story was just beginning. One evening, when the moon was full, Chief Edward returned home after his wives, Madame Adaku and Madame Lisa, had left for a burial. The mansion was quiet. Vicky, already in her corner, was about to fall asleep when the door creaked open. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice shaky. No answer. Then she saw him, Chief Edward, standing by the door, his shirt half open, his eyes red and glassy. "Vicky," he called. She moved back. "Sir, do you need water?" she asked. But Chief Edward didn't respond. He stepped inside, and with his heavy hand, he closed the door. "Please, sir," Vicky whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm your maid, please." But Chief Edward didn't listen. He came closer, his breath hot, his hands heavy. Vicky begged, but he pinned her down, and that night, her childhood, her safety, and her peace were taken from her. When it was over, he stood up, fixed his shirt, and walked out without a word. The door closed, and the night remained. Vicky didn't sleep. She sat, knees drawn to her chest, her heart pounding in her ears. The next morning, Chief Edward went about his day as if nothing had happened, sipping tea, reading the newspaper, and giving orders. Vicky swept the corridor, her hands trembling, her eyes red, but she remained silent. The walls seemed to watch her. The dust beneath her feet whispered, "Life will never be the same again." Months passed, and as Vicky continued her work, she felt a change inside her. Her gown no longer fit. Her waist became round, her back hurt even more, and her eyes always felt tired. One day, Madame Adaku entered the kitchen and noticed Vicky's growing belly. She stopped in her tracks, narrowing her eyes. "What's this?" she barked. "Are you sick?" Vicky froze, her voice barely a whisper. "Chief Edward," she said, her voice breaking. Madame Adaku's face twisted in shock, and then, behind her, Madame Lisa laughed bitterly. "So, this is your plan," she hissed. "You want to escape poverty with a pregnancy." Madame Adaku added, her voice sharp. They didn't believe Vicky when she tried to explain, calling her shameless and accusing her of bewitching the chief. But they didn't throw her out. They watched, whispered, and waited. Despite their hatred for her, Vicky stayed, her belly growing with each passing day. The tension in the house grew as well. One afternoon, the family doctor arrived. He examined Vicky and told the two wives the news. She was carrying a boy, a healthy male child. The news left both wives speechless. A boy, the heir they had longed for, was inside the maid they despised. That night, they burned the scan report, but the truth had already been spoken. They couldn't tell Chief Edward. Not yet. When he returned, he asked about the maid. Madame Adaku smiled. "She's just sick. Nothing serious." Madame Lisa added, "Maybe malaria." The doctor gave her medicine. And so, Vicky's truth remained buried, like a seed in the dark. But seeds, no matter how buried, will eventually grow. The battle for Vicky's womb had begun, and the two wives would stop at nothing to rid themselves of the baby boy. Their first attempt was poison. Madame Lisa prepared a meal, jollof rice and pepper soup, and called Vicky to eat. Exhausted from her work, Vicky ate the food, unaware of the deadly poison it contained. An hour later, the effects began. Vicky screamed in pain, clutching her stomach. She vomited violently and collapsed on the floor. The household panicked, and the doctor was called. He arrived quickly and examined her. She was rushed to the hospital, and the doctor returned with startling news. "She was poisoned," he said, his voice heavy. But the baby had survived. The doctor assured them that the child was still strong, still a boy. Chief Edward, confused and upset, ordered that only the cook should give Vicky food from now on. Vicky, weak but alive, was brought back to the mansion, her belly still growing, the boy still kicking. That night, as Vicky lay unconscious, the two wives sat in the parlor, plotting their next move. Madame Adaku's heart was filled with anger. "Enough of playing games," she said. "It's time for power." She traveled deep into the bush to seek help from a native doctor, a man known for his strange and dark powers. She offered him money and asked him to make the baby turn into a girl. The doctor agreed but warned that the price would be high. Madame Adaku paid, and the doctor mixed a strange potion: goat blood, black soap, ground charcoal, and leaves, chanting words that seemed to come from another world. "Rub it on her belly at midnight," he instructed. That night, while Vicky slept, Madame Adaku and Madame Lisa snuck into her room. They rubbed the concoction on her belly, chanting quietly, hoping for the baby to turn into a girl. But when a nurse secretly checked Vicky, she smiled and whispered, "Still a boy. A strong one." The spell had failed. Frustrated and desperate, the two wives began plotting again. They would not give up easily. Vicky's womb was the battlefield, and they were determined to win, no matter the cost. The doctor began pressing on her belly, and suddenly, sharp pain shot through Vicky's body. She screamed, her legs kicking and her arms pushing against him. The nurse in the room panicked and immediately called Chief Edward. He rushed in, demanding to know what was happening. The nurse pointed at the doctor, accusing him of doing something strange. Chief Edward shouted for him to stop and demanded another doctor. A second doctor arrived, quickly examining Vicky, her belly, and the report. He turned to Chief Edward and revealed the truth. The doctor had been attempting to remove the baby under the guise of a routine checkup. Chief Edward's face darkened with fury. "You tried to kill my child," he roared. The lying doctor trembled, muttering apologies, but Chief Edward was beyond listening. "Leave. Don't come back," he commanded, and the doctor fled the mansion. The two wives, Madame Adaku and Madame Lisa, retreated to their rooms. Vicky, though weak, still carried the child, who remained alive and strong despite all the attempts to harm him. The next morning, Chief Edward asked the doctor for answers, and after further examination, the doctor confirmed that the baby was healthy, a boy, still a lion in strength. Yet, something beyond natural explanation was preventing his birth. Chief Edward, left in deep contemplation, called for the truth, not the standard medical reports, and by morning, a doctor from Lagos arrived. He conducted an extensive check and then revealed that Vicky's child was strong, but something unnatural was hindering his birth. Meanwhile, Madame Adaku and Madame Lisa sat together, their faces pale with dread. The powder they had used to try and change the baby's fate had worked for a while, but now, both women were starting to fear what was happening. They had seen the boy in their dreams, sitting on the chief's throne, but now, the reality was much darker than they expected. Then, one fateful morning, the winds howled and trees swayed wildly. Inside her room, Vicky sat, humming a song her mother used to sing. Suddenly, water spilled between her legs. A sharp pain hit her body, and she realized it was time. She called out to the old maid, who rushed to inform Chief Edward. Within moments, he ordered the car to be ready. At the hospital, the nurses were shocked at the size of her belly, but one young nurse held her hand, assuring her, "You are not cursed, you are strong." Vicky gripped the bed as the pain intensified. On the third push, the room trembled, and the baby emerged. The boy was strong, his arms firm, his eyes sharp like the sun, and when he cried, it sounded like thunder breaking through the sky. The curse was broken. The spell shattered. Chief Edward stood by the hospital gate, waiting anxiously. When the nurse emerged holding the baby, he took him into his arms with pride. This was his son, his heir. He carried the boy back to the mansion, and that evening, a family meeting was called. The elders, the staff, and the wives gathered, with the sacred calabash at the center of the room. The chief instructed Madame Adaku to drink from it, and after a moment's hesitation, she did. The room fell into silence as her body trembled. She screamed in agony, confessing everything, how they had poisoned Vicky's food, cast the spell, and even bribed the doctor. Madame Lisa followed suit, drinking from the calabash. She collapsed to her knees, confessing her part in the plot. The room was heavy with silence. Chief Edward's face hardened. "You tried to kill my son. You tried to bury the truth with lies," he said, his voice like stone. He pointed to the door. "Leave my house now." The two women begged, but he turned away, his heart as cold as the walls around him. Vicky stood quietly by the stairs, holding her son, her eyes filled with emotion but no tears. She had endured so much, and now she stood tall, her strength unshaken. Chief Edward walked to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "From today," he said, "you are my only wife." The maids gasped, and the guards bowed. The air in the house shifted. The girl they once called cursed, the one they mocked in the market, who had carried shame for 5 long years, was now the mother of the heir, the queen of the house. The orphan who had risen from the ashes was now seated on a throne. The chief had spoken. Life would never be the same again. If you enjoyed this tale, please like the video, share it with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell for more enchanting stories like this one. Goodbye.